Hello everybody, how you doing? This is Fahad and this video is about the attribute selector in CSS. Alright, so this is the first part of the attribute selector. We're gonna have the second part as well. There are the 7 different attribute selectors. Okay, so there is a slight difference between each one of them, but in this video we're gonna learn about only 4 of them, and in the second part we're gonna learn next 3 of them. First of all, we're gonna learn about the attribute selector, a simple attribute selector. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, in this type of the attribute selector, you only have to specify the attribute of the element, that the element with this attribute will only be styled by the code you will be writing in the CSS. The second one is the attribute as well as the value selector. Okay, in this type of selector you have to select the element with the specified attribute and the value as well. The third one is a kind of attribute, you know, the approximately sign and equal sign value. So what does it mean? It means in this type of the attribute selector, it will select the elements with the attribute value containing the specified word that must have the space around that word. Alright, and the last one is this attribute selector. This type of the attribute selector is used to select the elements with a specified attribute starting with the specified value. Okay, and the value does have to be the whole word, either alone by or followed by the hyphen. Okay, I have just described the 4 different attribute selectors. Now we're gonna learn about these practically in the code. Okay, so I have just already written this simple code just to save up the time. So now I'm gonna use the style property. Okay, so I'm gonna choose the hyperlink tag A. Alright, now I'm gonna select the attribute of which is the target attribute. Now I'm gonna style this code. Okay, so what does this code mean? That it will only style the hyperlink tag or a tag in which we have used the target attribute. So you can see here that in the third link we haven't used the target attribute, so this styling would not have any effect on that. Okay, so let me just run it. Okay, now you can see here that the link 1 and the link 2 in which we have used the target attribute is styled, but the last one is not styled because we haven't used the target attribute in this link. Okay, so this is how the simple attribute selector work, that you have to select the tag and in which you have to select the specified attribute, so it will only style those tags in which that specified attribute is used. Alright, so for example, if I just change the attribute from target to href, so we have used the href, you know, the hyperlink reference in all of these links, so it will style all of these links. Let me just run it. Now you can see this is how the attribute selector, simple attribute selector work. So in the second scenario we have the attribute selector as well as the value. So for example, we have the same target value here, and you can see here we have the blank value here, and I just want to change the value of the second one. It would be top. Okay, so let me just give it a value here. I want to give it the blank. Okay, so this attribute selector will only style the link in which we have the target attribute, and as well as that target attribute must have the blank value. Alright, so it will only gonna affect the first link because only the first link have the blank value. So let me just run it here. Okay, now this is how it works. So if I just change the value from blank to top, it will affect the second link because the second link have the top value. Alright, so this is how the attribute plus value work. So now we're gonna have third one, which is this. Okay, so in this type of attribute selector, the attribute value must have the specified word. Okay, so it could be any word. Okay, so now we're gonna use the image element, and in image element I would like to use the title attribute, and I would like to give it a property of, I just want to write here, it would work fine. So what does this attribute selector mean? That it will only target the image in which the title of the image contain this word, okay, along with the other words as well. So it must have to be a word, so, and it must have a space around it. So for example, if I just change the value here, alright, so you can see here that we have specified the word in the title, and we have that word in this image, so it will gonna affect this image. Okay, so let me just run it. Right, so it is not kind of affecting here. I have done some mistake here, so there it is. I have to provide this symbol here. Now it will work fine. Okay, so this is how it works. Okay, so you can see the title of the image element contain of word, and it does have the space around it from the left and the right side as well. But if I just remove the space from one of its side, it will not be affecting the image. So let me just save it again, and you can see it here. So it must have to be a complete word with the space on the left side and the right side as well. And this is how this attribute selector work. And now we have this attribute selector. Okay, so in this attribute selector, okay, it is kind of similar to the previous one, but the only change in this attribute selector is that the word has to be started with that specific word that I will be providing in the value of the attribute, and it must have to be a complete word, okay, either alone or either followed by the hyphen. So for example, I want to use this one, so I just want to run it now, but it won't give any difference now because we have to make this of the first word of our title. Now it will work fine, okay, but if I just add one more word to it, it won't work, okay, because either it must be that single word, the of in this condition, but if you just want to add another word, you have to provide the hyphen between our first word and the second one. Now it will work, okay. So if you want to add more than one word, you have to provide the hyphen, just logo. It will still gonna work, but if I just change the word here from off to logo, it won't work because, okay, the word that you are specifying here in this attribute selector has to be the starting word, okay. So the logo is not a starting word, but if I just remove this, now it is the starting word. Save it again, then it will work. So this is how this attribute selector work. In the last video we have learned about the 4 different attribute selector, and in this video we will learn about the next 3 attribute selectors. Alright, so these are the 3 attribute selector that we're gonna learn in this video. Okay, the first one is this attribute selector is used to select the elements whose attribute values begin with the specified value. So it is kind of similar with the last attribute that we have learned in the last video, but here is the difference, that in the last attribute that we have learned, the specified value has to be a complete word, but in this attribute selector the values does not have to be a complete word, the whole word. Alright, so the next one is this one with the $sign. And what is this about? This selector is used to select the elements whose attribute values end with the specified value. Okay, so this one was start with the specified value, and this one is end with the specified value. Okay, the both values doesn't have to be a complete word. Okay, so you got to remember that. Okay, and the next one is this with the $sign. In this attribute selector, the position of the specified value is not defined, so it could be in the starting and the end as well as in the middle, somewhere in the attribute value it will work. This attribute selector doesn't have to be the whole word as well. Alright, let's just go to the editor and see how these different attribute selector behaves. In the first part of the attribute selector, the last attribute selector that we have learned was this one. Okay, so there is a slight difference between this attribute selector that was in the last video and this one, is that the specified value in this attribute selector has to be a complete word. Okay, complete word, and if you want to add one more word with that in the element, it has to be followed by the hyphen. If you haven't understand the first 4 attribute selector, it will be really difficult to understand these 3 ones. Only the difference is that between these one is that in this one the specified value must be a whole word, but in this one it doesn't have to be a whole word. Okay, so let me just show you how does this attribute selector work. So here we have the heading h1 paragraph. So I'm gonna go with the paragraph here, select the attribute here. Okay, this is the class attribute. Here I'm gonna provide some values here, that the class value must start with the hello paragraph. Okay, it must start with the hello. It can have the other words after the hello. Let me just give it the styling here. Okay, that will work fine. Okay, so now I'm just gonna use the class value here, attribute here, and the class attribute I just want to use the hello world. The second would be the hello. So you can see here our first paragraph is styled by this one, by this selector, attribute selector, because in this selector what we have done here, that I just want to style a paragraph whose class name start with the hello. Okay, so in this paragraph element the class name start with the hello, it starts with the hello. Okay, so after the hello it could have any number of the values, doesn't matter. Okay, so you can simply add them, it will still work. You can add the hyphen, it will still work. The whole idea of this is that it must start with the hello word. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a word. In this scenario I just can go with the he, it will still work. You can see here, so it does have to be a value, not the word. Okay, so if I just want to select the paragraph whose class start with the e only, so it will gonna select the second paragraph. Okay, no, because it has the space. Okay, so now it will gonna select the second paragraph. This is how you can use this attribute. Okay, it does have to be a value, not the complete word. You have to remember that. Alright, so this is how it works. And if I just want to use on the heading as well, so it could be delete the paragraph. Now this simple code is that whoever element in the HTML file is using the class whose name start with the e will have this background color. So if I just want to use the class attribute as the heading and it start with the easy, it will have that the background color. So this is how this attribute selector work. Now we're gonna have the second one. Okay, let me just delete this. Okay, now we have with the dollar sign. Is the dollar sign. Okay, so what is this attribute selector is all about? That type of the attribute selector depends on the last specified value. Okay, so the last one, okay, that we have discussed earlier was depending on the first value, but this one is depending on the last value. So for example, I just want to write here, we have this one. Okay, let me just declare a class here. The class would be hello world. Let me just copy this and paste it here, and this one would be hello. All right, so which one of these two elements gonna have this styling? Obviously the last one, because the idea of this attribute selector is that the attribute value must end with the specified value whatever you provide here. So this class value is not ending with the hello, it is just starting with the hello, so it won't work on this. But on this element, on this paragraph element, we have the class whose last value is the hello, so it is ending with the hello, so it will work on that. Okay, it will work on the paragraph. So let me just run it. Now you can see here that it is working on the paragraph whose class having the last value of the hello. Okay, same like the last attribute, it doesn't have to be the whole word, it just have to be a value. So if I just add the 0 here, okay, if I just add the 0 here, it will still work, because the last value of this class is o, so it will work on this paragraph. But if I just add o here, now it will gonna work on the both of our elements. Okay, all right, so I have to delete this thing here. Now it will gonna work on the both of the h1 element and the paragraph element. Now you can see that. So this is kind of similar to the last attribute. The only the difference is that the last one was depending on how the value of the attribute start, and this one depends on how the value of the attribute ends. All right, so this is how this attribute work. Okay, in last we have this attribute. This is kind of really a simple attribute. Okay, what does this attribute mean? That it will select or it will style only those element whose value have the specified value. Doesn't matter about the position, it could be on the start, middle, or just need to have that particular value whichever you provide here. So in this example I'm just providing here the o here. Okay, let me just delete this. Okay, so the idea of this attribute selector is that the class must have o in its name. Whatever the value specified value you will be providing here, it must have that specified value. Position of the value doesn't matter in this scenario. And one more thing here, that it doesn't have to be a whole word, it just have to be a letter. So it could be one letter or two letter or anything, it just have to be a value, not the whole word. Okay, you can see here the heading class doesn't have the o in it, but the class we have used in the paragraph does have the o in this class value, so it will only affect the paragraph. All right, so this is how it works. But if I just add e in it, okay, now it will only gonna affect the class which has the e in its value. You can see here, you get the idea. But if I just simply go for the L, now you can see here the hello or the hello class does have the L in it, and the world does have the L in it. So both of these classes will be affected by this styling. Now I just hope you got the idea of how these attributes work. And one more thing here, let me just specify you which of the attributes does need to have the whole word and which of the attribute selector doesn't have to have the whole word. Okay, let me just write it here. So these are the attribute selector that we have learned in the last video. These need to have the whole word to function, but the last one that we have learned in this video doesn't have to be a whole word. You just have to provide the values. Okay, the simple value. The value could be a single letter, 2 letters. It doesn't necessary to have the whole word. So this was the idea of these attribute selector. Okay, I really hope that you learned about these attribute selectors, because these will really help you to understand the concept. Alright, so this is all for this video. If you really find this useful, hit the like button and subscribe the channel, and bye bye.